Good day, folks. Here I am in the barn as usual. Okay, this is assignment 4. This one's going to be about communication. Clear, honest, direct communication. All right, so I have two different exercises that kind of go together that I want to present to you today. And to introduce the first part, I want to talk about 4 different types of communication. Likely you're aware of this, many of you. But this is something I have found to be, for myself, extremely helpful in relationship as I've worked to learn how to communicate well in relationship. And the 4 types are aggressive, passive, passive-aggressive, and assertive. Okay, and I'm just going to go through real quick and explain what those are, and then I've got something I want you to do with that. So aggressive communication, that's pretty obvious. That's when someone is being, belligerent, bullying, that kind of thing. I thought I'd use an example to illustrate these, a simple example. This is something that was happened in my previous relationship, not my current one, where we had, my partner and I, we lived together, and we had some agreements about how we would do things it's good to do. It's good to have agreements. And one of the agreements was whenever anybody used the kitchen and made some food, then they would clean up after themselves before they go on to do something else. And, occasionally I will admit I did not follow our agreement. And so then there was a communication that would ensue. Okay, and so, an aggressive form of communication in that case is, what's wrong with you that you won't clean up after yourself? That's an aggressive way to communicate. What would be another one? You're always like this. You always care more about yourself than you care about what I need. So that's aggressive communication. Okay, so that's pretty clear and obvious, I think. Okay, so passive communication. So passive communication is what you do. It's a way of communicating because you want something or need something, but not in a direct way. So, for example, you're sitting there at the dinner table, and the salt is on the other side of the table, and you can't reach it. So you would say, this food could really use some salt. And then people are supposed to get that you want salt from it. It's very passive. So in the example of the dishes and leaving the dirty dishes in the kitchen, a passive way for my partner to have done this, and I don't think she hardly ever did this kind of communication, but a passive way to do it would be, sure would be nice if this kitchen were clean. Sure would be. It sure is awkward when there's somebody leaves dishes in the sink. So that's a passive way to communicate. All right. Passive aggressive is passive, but then is also aggressive. It's going towards the person. And so sarcasm is a classic example of passive aggressive communication. So like in our example, see what would be a good passive aggressive thing. It's like, of course, there we go. Yeah, dirty dishes in the sink. We could have expected that. And it could even be said to me, directed at me. It's like, what, you think you're the king of this house? You get to just lay your stuff around and everybody's going to clean up after you? So that's passive aggressive. And then what we're going for, I think, and this is the part that's been helpful for me. I mean, that's pretty clear, and that's, I think, common knowledge that there's those different ways to communicate that aren't helpful. The word that I like for this is assertive, or assertive communication. Or many of you who hear me talk about things will hear me say clear, honest, direct communication. What I mean by that is assertive communication. And so in assertive communication, what we're doing is we're just saying what's so, without any kind of conditioned thing attached to it, without trying to make the other person feel bad, without trying to shame or humiliate anyone, without trying to steamroll them, as in the case of the aggressive communication, just make them do what we want them to do. In assertive communication, you are saying what's so. If there's something that needs to be changed or something that you want, you say that, but without any kind of manipulation. Just clear, honest, direct communication. So, for example, I'll use a couple examples. So, in the case of the dirty dishes, what my partner might say to me, and this is what in the beginning we had to work all this stuff out, but this is what she learned to do, and it was great. I really appreciated it as she learned to do this. She would just say something like, she'd call me over and say, point out, yes, again, there are dirty dishes in the sink, and she would say, I want us to both be aware that we have an agreement that whenever we cook for ourselves in the kitchen, that we will clean up after ourselves. I just want to point out you did not do that in this case. And so I would like to request of you that you would follow that agreement that we have. Super clean. So she's not, in that kind of communication, she's not putting any conditioning on me at all. She is just saying what's so and making a request for a change in behavior. Super clean. And, it's obvious why that's helpful and good, right? Because if you're trying to communicate something and you back it up with some kind of conditioned thing, like some sarcasm or some kind of aggressive speech, or you're speaking out of your anger or frustration, for example, then that's going to cause the other person to react from their conditioning too. And then you get into this big tangle, and it's just ugly and difficult. And we all know that experience. And so, communication, the way we communicate has a huge impact on our relationships. There's, this is on a little bit of an aside, but there's someone I heard speak a while back, and he was saying that relationship is a conversation. He said it is a conversation, and that makes a lot of sense to me. It is a conversation between two people. And so our conversation and our communication needs to be, as best as we can, super clean. And in terms of this practice, what that means is without conditioning. And so if we can learn how to communicate assertively, clearly, honestly, directly, without backing it up with any conditioned stuff, then we're going to really up our chances to have a good, loving relationship. Because that gives the other person the space to communicate in turn in the same way, clearly, honestly, and directly. And we can communicate well. There's something I posted in the class recently about my current partner Kathleen and I got into a misunderstanding, basically is what it turned out to be, and got into a tense, very difficult kind of place actually with each other. And we came through the other side in a way that was just beautiful and just brilliant. I just loved it. And the reason was because we both had the ability to communicate clearly, honestly, and directly with each other. And we did, even in that circumstance that was tense and had there's a lot of energy in it. So it's just the best thing going. So what would be another example? So let's say my partner is kind of a homebody and doesn't like to go out, and I really like to go out. I want to go out in the town and do things. Of course, that's not really possible right now, but in times when that is possible. We haven't gone out in a while, and I really want to go out. So the passive way to communicate that would be, hey, have you heard there's a new restaurant in town? People say it's really good. And I'm supposed to get, that you want to go, out, if that's said. And so, of course, that's not going to work very well. To communicate about that clearly and honestly and directly, I might say, hey, I recognize that, you're more of a homebody than I am. And that's fine. That doesn't bother me at all. And I actually love that about you. And sometimes I would really like to go out. And tonight, I would really like to go out. Would you be willing to put on some, town clothes and head out and have a big time with me? So super clear and honest and direct. Okay. All right. So that's kind of a background. So the first part of this exercise is going to be one of those where I'm going to ask you a question, and then if you would pause the video and answer the question with a pen and paper. All right. So if you need to go get pen and paper, go do that now. Hit pause and go get that now. Okay. So this is going to be a series of questions, and so hit pause, journal about in response to the question, and then hit play again and come back and get the next question. Okay. So the first question is, when you look at your relationships of all kinds, intimate, between friends, parent-child, whichever side of that you're on, employer, employee, whatever it might be, do you see ways that you communicate aggressively? And if you do, and you may not, but if you do, where? What does that look like? What do you actually say? Okay, so hit pause on the video if you would. Okay, very good. Welcome back. Okay, next question, very similar. When you look at your relationships of all kinds, do you see ways in which you communicate passively? Where you don't say what was really so, but you try to influence somebody's behavior by obliquely saying what is so or what you want. Okay, so if you'd hit pause and answer that question. Okay, third question, you can see where this is going, I'm sure. Do you see ways in which you communicate passive-aggressively? Sarcastically, for example. And if so, where do you do that? Who do you do that with? How do you do that? How does that actually come out of your mouth? Okay, hit pause. Okay, and then number 4, do you see places where you communicate assertively? Where your communication is clean, without conditioning? Where you're able to ask for what you want and what you need, or ask for a change in behavior, or point something out, give feedback in a way that's clean, that doesn't have conditioning backing it up. Okay, next question, along these same lines. Do you see ways, in other ways, that you communicate where you are attempting to impose some kind of guilt, shame, regret, anything along those lines on the person you're communicating with? Any place where you're trying to get, say it another way, to get them to feel guilty or ashamed, things like that in order to influence their behavior. Okay, next question. Do you see any other ways in which you communicate manipulatively? Where you're attempting to manipulate something about the arrangement you have with someone. We're trying to get somebody to do something, but it's manipulative. Where you're not communicating clearly, but you're trying to make something happen through some kind of underhand communication. You may not. It may be that what we've done so far has covered it, but just is there anything else you see in that department? Okay, next question. Do you see places where you communicate lovingly? Especially, do you see places where you have good excuses to communicate aggressively or passive-aggressively, but you communicate lovingly instead? When some conditioning in you has been triggered, and yet you choose to communicate lovingly. Do you notice yourself doing that in any kind of relationships? Okay, very good. And so the last question in this section is more kind of overarching, and I want you to take some time with this, if you will. So go through what your answers to the other questions, and I want you to look to see what are the results of those different kinds of communication. So when you communicate aggressively, what is the result? And on 2 levels, what is the result outwardly? What actually tends to happen if you communicate aggressively or passive-aggressively or assertively or lovingly? What tends to happen? What's the result? And what do you get inwardly by communicating that way? So, for example, with aggressive communication, if I'm communicating aggressively, I'm likely to get a feeling of self-righteousness. Or maybe I'm getting to just dump my stuff on another person. Or maybe I'm getting to avoid some things that are really going on with me that need to be attended to, and I'm just putting them on the other person. Okay, so more process level stuff, like what do you get on the inside? Or to say it another way, what's the motivation for communicating in that way? Okay, and that goes with the positive ones too, with the assertive one and the loving one. So if you would, hit pause on the video and when I finish speaking, and then take some time and just explore that. What are the results? Because that to me is That's an important thing to see, the connection between what we do and what we get, because there's a lot of motivation that comes from changing. There's a lot of motivation that comes to help to change things when you can look at it from that point of view. Okay, we'll come back. Okay, I lied when I said that that was the last question. Here's the other thing, I just forgot it. So the last one, part of this section is, so when you look over everything that we have kind of outlined through this, what do you see as the work you need to do in terms of communication in relationships? What is the work that you need to do? Where are the troubled spots, the places where you need to clean things up, where you need to work on improving your communication and get more centered perhaps in your communication? And in particular, what do you want to work on now? I wouldn't recommend, maybe perhaps if you're seeing a number of different areas to work on, just pick one. What would you like to work on now that you want to practice, say, for this coming week or these coming few weeks? What particular aspect of your communication do you want to try to improve? Okay, so hit pause and journal about that a little bit. Okay, very good. Thank you, and welcome back again. I get it that there's a lot that goes with this, and I'm doing it that way on purpose. I want there to be a lot for people to look at and a lot for us to talk about in the class, especially since we're really just doing this once a week. And I want to give you a lot to look at as you go through the week and as you're practicing and as you're being in your relationships. Okay, so set that aside. Set your notebook and pen aside for just a moment. Keep it nearby because you're going to need it again in a moment. And so now I'd like for you to move into a guided imagery. So again, you know the deal. No right or wrong way to do this. You're welcome to lie down if you want to, unless you feel like there's a chance that you might fall asleep. So I'm just going to guide you in your imagination. This one's going to be fairly short, and just see what you see. There's no right experience to have, no right way to do this. Just see what comes up, and then I'll tell you what to do with that in a moment. Okay? So I'll give you just a moment to get comfortable. Okay, and so if you would, turn your attention, as we usually do, to your breath and your breathing. And just really allow yourself to relax right now. Let go of any tensions that's in your body. If there are thoughts banging around in your mind as a result of what we have just done, or anything else that's going on in your life, to see if you can let that go right now. And give you a chance to just sink into your in-the-moment experience, to sink down into your body, and just fully be here as best you can. And as we usually do, and the reason we usually do this is because it's helpful with this and as we go through life, through the day, to go through life, to check in with our body and our feelings and our mind. So check in with your body for a moment. Do you notice any places of tension? Do you notice there any places where you're hanging on? If so, see if you can breathe into that tension. And allow yourself, as best you can, to allow that tension to leave your body with the breath. And now, if you would, turn your attention to your feelings, to your emotional state. What are you feeling right now? Remember that your feelings are in your body. They're not in your thoughts. They're not in your head. What are you actually feeling right now? What is your in this moment experience? No need to change or attempt to alter what you're experiencing in any way. Just notice what it is that you're experiencing and see if you can just be with that, whatever it may be. Okay, great. And now if you would, turn your attention to your mind. And notice what's going on in your mind. Notice what kind of thoughts are there. And notice also the general state of your mind. Is it busy? Is it focused? Is it relaxed? Is it wandering? Just like with your feelings, no need to change anything. No need to make anything go away. Just notice what's going on in your mind. And then whenever you feel ready, return your attention to your breath and your breathing. Okay, and now if you would, go to a place in your mind and in your heart when you have felt or when you feel troubled by something. Maybe when there's something that's going on that's hard, that's difficult for you. A place maybe where you feel alone with something, where you could really use some support. A place perhaps where you feel challenged or overwhelmed or just unhappy, sad, anything like that. So see what arises and in some way you know how, as best you can, just go into that place. Allow yourself to sink into that place where you feel life is hard, where it's difficult, where you need support. And notice how that feels. Notice how it feels to be in this challenging, difficult place. Okay, and now if you would, imagine that someone comes along and finds you in this place. In this internal place of unhappiness, of sorrow, of difficulty, of overwhelm. Imagine that somebody comes along and finds you in this place, and this person loves you unconditionally. This person thinks you're just the greatest thing going. Just loves you absolutely exactly as you are, and wants nothing but the best for you. Wants nothing but for you to be happy on this earth. And for you to feel good. For you to feel good and up to life and up to whatever the challenge that is there in front of you. Perhaps a visual comes to mind of what this person looks like. This person who embodies compassion and kindness and unconditional love. Who is this person? Can you feel the presence? Can you feel the loving presence of this compassionate being? And now for a moment, if you would, imagine that this person is speaking to you, is offering support, offering comfort, offering guidance and wisdom. What would you want to hear from this person, from this loving, compassionate being? Would you want to hear that you are loved unconditionally? Would you want to hear that you're okay and that you're going to be okay? Would you want to hear that this loving, kind presence is there and will be there for you and will never leave you? Imagine that you can have just anything that you want this person to say. What would that be? What would that be from this challenging, difficult place? Okay, and now let that go, please, and return your attention to your breath. Take a couple nice, long, deep breaths. And then whenever you feel ready, open your eyes, hit pause on the video, and write down what those things are, what you wanted to hear from that loving, compassionate presence. Write it down in full sentences. I love you. I'm here for you. I'll never leave you. Whatever it may be. Okay? Make a list of those things, what you wanted to hear from that compassionate being. Take your time. Take your time with that. Really feel into that. And whenever you feel ready, come back and hit pause on the video again, and we'll finish the assignment. Okay, very good. Welcome back. Okay, and so the last part of this assignment is I want to ask you to practice offering those things to you. You know, this is along the lines of, we've been talking about this already in the class, about how we can love ourselves unconditionally, about how we can embody this big place of unconditional love and unconditional acceptance and offer that to the human. So this is a tangible, practical way of practicing that. So as you're going through your day, practice saying these things to yourself that you've written down that came up in the imagery. It's really helpful to have some particular times in the day. Like I think I've probably said somewhere, I do this practice first thing in the morning when I wake up, last thing at night before I go to sleep, but then also all through the day. Especially if you feel troubled, if there's something difficult going on, then you can practice these, I call these reassurances. Practice these reassurances, say these reassurances to the part of you who needs to hear them. Or if something's going really well, maybe you've just done something like that's super great that you're really proud of. That too, it's like, oh, you're so awesome. Yeah, wow, I really saw that. Well done. You know, those kind of things too, okay? So, so practice that and see what arises. You're not trying to have any particular experience. You're just trying to see what arises, okay? So for both parts of these assignments, this assignment, the first part, the written part, and then the guided imagery part, see what experience you have, and then let us know what you see in the class so you can share your practice with all of us and we can all learn from each other. Okay? Thank you for your time and attention. Be well. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I will look forward to seeing you soon in the class.